All right, now that we have some refresher on our types of triangles and talking about different types of angles, we're going to circle it all back and really dive into our right triangle trig. So you've kind of just scratched the surface on trig when you took geometry. Some of you took it more recently than others. But really all we learned about in our geometry class is what we called SOHCAHTOA. So we're going to kind of skip down here a little bit, really just jump into what the ratios are. So if you remember, we had a nice little phrase, SOH, CAH, and TOA. Okay, the S stood for sine, okay, O stood for opposite, and H stood for hypotenuse. So the sine of an angle was always our opposite over our hypotenuse. So we would usually write this as the sine of whatever the angle is. This one we can use as theta, is opposite over hypotenuse. Okay, next we had C for cosine. That was AH, so adjacent over hypotenuse. So if we stick with the theme of our theta, that would be adjacent over hypotenuse. Tangent is what T stood for. That was opposite over adjacent. So we would write this as tangent of our angle, still sticking with theta, is opposite over adjacent. So remember, theta, or whatever angle we chose, was usually an acute angle, meaning that it was smaller than 90 degrees. And then we use that to either find the side or the angle of a right triangle. Remember, this is right triangle trigonometry. So for the meantime, we're only going to use it for any right triangle, just like it says right up here. Okay, now we're going to introduce the other three trig ratios. So these are called cosecant, secant, and cotangent. They're new to us, but they're not very different from the three that we already know. So the cosecant is actually what we call the reciprocal of sine. So cosecant is going to be SCS is our abbreviation. Nope, I forgot my parentheses. So this is equivalent to 1 over the sine of theta. Okay, so if it's 1 over the sine, meaning that it's the reciprocal means we're just going to flip it over. So instead of opposite over hypotenuse, the cosecant is hypotenuse over opposite. The opposite or the reciprocal of cosine is what we call secant. So that's abbreviated as SEC. So this is 1 over the cosine. So since it's the reciprocal of cosine, it's going to be the hypotenuse over the adjacent. So we're not changing anything about how we're finding this. We're just simply flipping the ratio over. So fittingly, the opposite of tangent would be cotangent. We abbreviate this COT. Okay, so cotangent is the reciprocal of our lovely tangent. So it would be A over O. Okay, so that's kind of this is just refreshing your memory on 1, how to write your SOHCAHTOA, and 2, introducing your cosecant, secant, and your cotangent, which is just building a little bit off of what we already know and talking about the reciprocals. Okay, so here's a better picture if you actually wanted to write the ratios for a particular triangle. If you had these side lengths A, B, and C, what that would look like. And notice they are all the same ones, just simply flipped over. Okay, and here's your SOHCAHTOA written out. If you needed a little refresher there, if you wanted to actually write out the words adjacent, hypotenuse, and opposite, that's all there for you. Okay, and then here's just a nice little chart down here for you. It reiterates your sine, cosine, and tangent, and then it even includes those reciprocal identities there.